Hello, welcome back to the counselor's video manual. In this video, we'll be going over the R, the role. In simpler terms, this is really to understand what our purpose as counselors is through this retreat. And I'll be going over some of the portions in the manual and kind of sort of expanding to give you a better understanding of it and to make comments and sort of like give you a more expansive understanding. Really, that's what it is. The first one that we have is that the purpose of a small group leader, that's the counselors, is to facilitate the group. First, you have to imagine that all these campers are coming from different churches, different backgrounds, and maybe some of them know each other, but in its most likelihood, a lot of them don't know each other. And even if they do, it's been a year since they've interacted. So you can imagine there is a certain awkwardness, there is a certain need for ice breaking within the group. And this is very important because a lot of the experiences that we're going to have through the retreat, whether they are in the context of worship, in the context of activities, everything comes down to how much of that you can assimilate within the small group. So you can imagine that if the small group is not comfortable with each other, meaning the members of the small group are not comfortable with each other, then you're really cutting down a lot of the diminishing a lot of the experience within the retreat. That's why having a good small group group dynamic, it's going to be very important, and that's where your first role really comes in. We said that our role really is about being cheerleaders, about being bridges. Really, for you to be in that small group, one of the most important things you'll have to do in the context of the small group interaction is that you're going to have to lay the foundations to bridge one camper to another. And I know that sounds like it either sounds very simple to you or very complicated. Either way, it's going to be a different challenge depending on who you get in your group. You have to know that a lot of the campers, they're going to be very nervous in the beginning. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be a rather foreign environment for them. So we have to do our best to really make it a really good environment for them. So when you start gathering, you can think of some conversation starters. Simple things like, who's your favorite superhero? Who's your favorite, I don't know, what's your favorite pet or something like that. Think of few of these that you can use in the beginning of your group gathering. Now, you won't have to use that all the time. This is really for the first and maybe even the second day. But once this group gets more comfortable with each other, you're going to need less and less of these icebreakers and conversation starters. But in the beginning, it's going to be very important. Another thing that to remember is that in the beginning, because of what you have, because of your role as a counselor, as a bridge builder, and as a icebreaker in a way, you will sometimes literally need to sustain the conversation. And what do I mean by that? Maybe say you start with the icebreakers, you start with the conversation starters, and you ask somebody, what was your wildest experience? Like what was your most dangerous experience or something like that. And somebody shares an experience like that, right? Somebody who's less awkward, less timid, they'll say, "Oh, I almost got ran over by a car." And naturally, what you would want is that somebody says, "Hey, I had something similar happen to me, except it was not a car, it was a bike or something like that." It should naturally flow like that. But even if they're thinking about that, even if that's what's going on in their mind, they're not going to say anything. So you're going to have to pick that up and kind of look around and see who's wanting to kind of get into that conversation. And then you're going to have to point to that person and say, "Hey, did you have something similar like that happen to you?" So that's what I mean by literally carrying the conversation, and that applies to any kind of topic, any sort of direction in which the conversation is going. And most of all, really, I know that when we get very zealous about our role and our responsibility within the group, and when you prepare yourself for this, sometimes our preparation gets in the way of what is truly important within the group. Just because we have all this conversation starters prepared, just because we have this idea about carrying the conversation in our mind, sometimes that can get in the way of actually listening to our campers. I would say also pay attention to that. It's important to be prepared, but also we gotta be faithful to the moment. We gotta be faithful to what's happening right in front of us, and a lot of the you'll notice, if you listen carefully to what the campers are saying, you'll notice a great deal of things. You'll notice maybe them in sharing their past and memories and things like that. You'll notice certain pains, certain sufferings, and things that that will play a big role within prayer. And when you start listening to them, you'll start noticing things that they may not be saying with their own words, but it's there. That's something that they may be struggling with. They may be having difficulties with, and when you can sort of catch those things and hold them in prayer and be able to approach them in a way that shows that you have been respectful to their views and respectful to what they're going through, it can have a very profound effect in their experience of what counselors are and what they do. That's the other part is listen to what they say. And then the second part of the second role of that we have is to be a support person, be an older brother and sister for those who are going to be there. It is true that we are there and we have to exercise a certain amount of authority in caring for the campers that are there. But above all things, we really want to give them this sort of atmosphere where they can rely on you, where they can come to you as an older brother and sister who has gone through this before, who has experienced certain things before they have, and tell them and give them an assurance of, hey, I know this can be very awkward and challenging right now, but there's great things. There's great things that you can find in this place, and to be just that older sister brother role for them. And one thing that we have to remember about being support is that just because the role implies that you're not the same as the campers, you cannot really be too segregated from the experience of the campers. Remember that the experience that we try to really aim for in this retreat is a very expansive, inclusive, and an all surrounding experience. And I know those sounds very generic words, but what we're really trying to mean by that is that the campers will never really get that full experience unless those who are leading them are having the same experience. So you're not really there to spectate what the campers are going through. As you know that, as if you've been there before, you'll know that when we do activities, when we do games, when we do worship, we expect all counselors to participate in the same capacity as the campers, to experience everything from their level, from their sort of point of view, and to be able to, so that you can be a better guide, so you can be a better leader for them. Now, at this, two people will appreciate this. First one, your campers will definitely appreciate the fact that you are experiencing retreat just the way they're experiencing retreat. But the second person that's going to appreciate is going to be you. Because when you go through this, sometimes you can feel like, oh my God, this is so predictable. Like I've been a camper. Why should I have to go through all this? But it's very different. It's very different when you're going. And please do pay attention to what I'm about to say. When you experience retreat as a counselor, but in the same way that campers do. See, because a lot of times when campers become counselors, they want to experience a retreat in an entirely different way. So they don't want to be participating in the same things, going through the same games, and sort of singing in the same way and jumping around and all that. They don't want to do that because they feel like, okay, now I'm a counselor, I want to do it slightly differently. But actually, that robs you of a very, very incredible experience that you're going to have. So just the fact that you're a counselor and you have this different perspective makes it already different for you. So make sure to go through the retreat experience just like the campers are going through. And that in itself is going to be very different, but also you will appreciate yourself doing that at the end of the retreat. Because I can promise you that for counselors, retreat can be as profound and as powerful as it is for campers. So yeah, I would say, just experience retreat with great enthusiasm, be passionate, be silly, be undignified, just like David. Be undignified in the way you worship, in the way you participate in games, and definitely it'll make for a much better experience. And then this is the other part, right? That as a counselors, wanting to be more intentional about our support, our supportive roles as counselors for the campers. This is probably the most effective way to do it, because if they come with concerns, if they come something that they need from us, we want to give it to them, right? But often we might forget that the best sort of support we can give them is for us to become like them during the retreat and experience the retreat just like the campers. In my experience, in my opinion, that is the most supportive thing you can do for the campers. The third part, and this is, I cannot emphasize this enough, this is a very important part. You're not there to teach. That's very important. Teaching, and I do mean that in the traditional way. Now, we can get overzealous in our roles as counselors, and when we get into small group environments, we, in sort of in the same heart of loving our campers and really wanting the best for them, we can sort of undertake a role that was not really designed for counselors through this at this retreat. We're not there to teach. The teaching is going to happen through the guest speaker, through the time of worship, and what we are there to do as counselors is to help our campers process what they have learned, what they have been taught, so that they don't miss out on anything. We often underestimate, because of the age of our campers, of how much their understanding of what they're hearing in the message. And yes, sometimes they can be very lost. They can be like, oh, what was that about? I don't remember at all, and I don't really know what that is about. And in some cases, you'll need to remind them. You'll need to go over a concise, sort of a brief summary of the message so that they really can get back to it and they can connect back to the what the message was. But a lot of times we do underestimate how much of that word is being understood by the youth. For all we know, God has already started doing something in their hearts. God already started touching certain areas in their lives and stimulating certain aspects of their understanding, of their vision, of their dreaming. And we don't want to get in the way of that. So we want them to naturally process what they have heard. And what we can do there is to provide guidance so that they don't go off topic, right? What we can do is be there so that they really remain sort of true to what the time of the message was. And we'll go over more details about the sharing guidelines and what you will be doing exactly, the do's and don'ts and how-tos of the small group sharing time. But remember that role. You're not there to teach so much as to encourage them and to be a facilitator for them in that time. Because there is, even if you know that you can teach them something in that moment, there's nothing that you can teach them that God can't do better. And that's something that we have to humbly accept. No matter how much we know, and I'm not saying you don't know, I'm sure that you know plenty, that you have a lot to teach them, but we have to put a little bit of that aside for the better experience that the campers can have. All right, that was part 2 of our counselor's video manual. See you in the next one. Bye.